Before we dive into the story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. Wishing you a beautiful day now. Sit back and enjoy the story. Asterisk, the blood on Elena Vasquez's hands had long since dried, but she could still feel its phantom warmth as she gripped the steering wheel of her stolen Mercedes. Rain hammered against the windshield like bullets, each drop exploding into fractured starbursts that mirrored the chaos in her mind. The neon signs of downtown Seattle blurred past in streaks of electric blue and poisonous green, casting her bruised face in alternating light and shadow. She had exactly 17 minutes before they discovered the body. The GPS guided her through unfamiliar streets toward the only address she'd memorized from her father's hidden files. A safe house, he'd called it, though nothing about her life had been safe for years. The engine purred beneath her, sound that should have been comforting but only reminded her of the last time she'd heard her father's voice. "If something happens to me, find Marcus Kane," he'd whispered through bloodied lips as the warehouse burned around them. "Tell him the Kozlov debt dies with me." Now Victor Vasquez was dead, executed by the very people he'd trusted, and Elena was the only witness to a murder that would topple 3 crime families if the truth ever surfaced. The weight of that knowledge sat in her chest like a stone, heavier than the grief, heavier than the fear. The address led her to a narrow brownstone squeezed between a shuttered bookstore and a Vietnamese restaurant. Yellow light spilled from a single third-floor window, and Elena felt a desperate hope flutter in her chest. Someone was home. She parked 3 blocks away and walked through the downpour, her designer heels clicking against wet pavement like a countdown timer. Every shadow could hide an assassin. Every car might contain her death. The paranoia that had kept her alive for the past 6 hours wrapped around her like armor, cold and necessary. The front door stood slightly ajar, which sent ice flooding through her veins. Either Marcus Kane was expecting her, or she was walking into another trap. Elena pushed the door open with trembling fingers and stepped into a narrow hallway that smelled of coffee and something metallic. Blood. The scent triggered a memory of her father's warehouse, of Dmitry Kozlov's smile as he pressed the gun to Victor's temple, and she nearly turned and ran. But she had nowhere left to go. Footsteps echoed from upstairs, deliberate and unhurried. A man's voice called down, rough with exhaustion. "Third floor, doors open." Elena climbed the stairs on unsteady legs, her wet dress clinging to her skin, like a second layer of vulnerability. Each step brought her closer to either salvation or destruction, and she couldn't tell which scared her more. The apartment door revealed a spacious loft with exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling, windows that showcased the storm raging outside. Elena's attention locked immediately on the man standing beside a leather couch, a glass of whiskey in his left hand and a loaded pistol in his right. Marcus Kane looked nothing like she'd expected. At 34, he was tall and lean with the kind of dangerous beauty that belonged in a Renaissance painting. Dark hair fell across his forehead in waves that looked artfully tousled, but she suspected were simply neglected. His green eyes held the flat coldness of someone who'd seen too much death, and a thin scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, giving his face a rakish asymmetry that should have been off-putting but wasn't. He wore jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the corded muscle of his arms, and when he moved, it was with the fluid grace of a predator. Everything about him whispered danger. From the casual way he held the gun to the way his gaze traveled over her body with clinical assessment. "Elena Vasquez," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like both a greeting and a death sentence. "You're 3 hours late. My father is dead." The words came out steadier than she'd expected, and she lifted her chin in defiance of the tears threatening to fall. "Dmitry Kozlov killed him tonight." Marcus set down his whiskey, but kept the gun trained on her with practiced ease. "I know. I also know you watched it happen from the warehouse rafters, and that you have a flash drive containing financial records that could destroy half the criminal enterprises on the West Coast." Elena's hand instinctively moved to her purse, where the drive sat like a loaded bomb. "How could you possibly know that?" A ghost of a smile played at the corners of Marcus's mouth, but it never reached his eyes. "Because your father and I had an arrangement. It's one that you've now inherited, whether you want it or not." The rain against the windows grew more violent, matching the thundering of Elena's pulse. She'd come here seeking help, but the predatory way Marcus was looking at her suggested she'd simply traded one dangerous situation for another. What kind of arrangement? She asked, though part of her already dreaded the answer. Marcus finally lowered the gun, setting it on the coffee table. With deliberate care, when he looked at her again, there was something almost gentle in his expression, which somehow made him seem even more dangerous. The kind that means you're mine now, Princessa. The only question is whether you're going to make this easy or hard. The endearment, spoken in perfect Spanish, with an accent she couldn't place, sent an unwelcome shiver through her body. Elena backed toward the door, but Marcus moved with liquid speed, blocking her path without seeming to hurry. Recommend running, he said softly. Kozlov's men are watching the building. The only reason you're still breathing is because you're under my protection now. Elena felt the walls closing in around her, the weight of forces beyond her control pressing down until she could barely breathe. Her father was dead. Her old life was over, and now this beautiful, terrifying stranger was claiming ownership of her soul. What do you want from me? She whispered. Marcus stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his green eyes, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his body. When he reached out to touch her face, his fingers were surprisingly gentle against her bruised cheek. Everything, he said simply. Your loyalty, your trust, your partnership in taking down the people who killed your father. Elena's breath caught as the true magnitude of what he was proposing hit her. This wasn't just about protection or survival. This was about revenge, about justice, about walking willingly into a world that had already cost her everything she'd ever loved. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the universe itself was waiting for her answer. And if I say no? Marcus's thumb traced the line of her jaw with devastating tenderness. Then Kozlov wins. Your father's death means nothing, and you spend the rest of your very short life looking over your shoulder. Lena closed her eyes, feeling the last pieces of her innocent world crumble away. When she opened them again, she saw her reflection in Marcus's pupils, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tell me what I need to do. Marcus's smile this time was sharp enough to cut glass, and Elena realized with a jolt of terror, in anticipation that she'd just made a deal with the devil himself. Elena woke to the scent of coffee and the sound of Marcus's voice drifting through the apartment like smoke. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, revealing a Seattle morning scrubbed clean by the previous night's storm. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot why every muscle in her body ached with tension. Then reality crashed back like a physical blow. Her father was dead. She was a fugitive, and she'd spent the night on the couch of a man who might be her salvation or her destruction. Marcus stood at the kitchen island with his back to her, speaking in rapid Russian to someone on his phone. He'd changed into a charcoal suit that emphasized the lean power of his frame, and his hair was slicked back with military precision. Even from across the room, Elena could feel the dangerous energy radiating from him, like heat from a forge. "Ya punimayu," he said, his accent flawless and cold. "Yes, I understand. Ona zia dies. Ona v bezopisnosti. She's here. She's safe." Elena's blood turned to ice. Russian. He was speaking Russian to someone about her. After last night's revelations? About Dmitry Kozlov. That felt like a betrayal sharp enough to stop her heart. Marcus ended the call and turned to face her, his green eyes unreadable. "Good, you're awake. We have work to do." "Who were you talking to?" Elena kept her voice steady, but her hand had instinctively moved to the knife she'd taken from Marcus's kitchen counter the night before, now hidden beneath the throw pillow. "Someone who's going to help us destroy Kozlov." Marcus poured 2 cups of coffee, his movements fluid and unhurried. "Unless you'd prefer to do this alone." Elena studied his face, searching for deception, for the cold calculation she'd seen. In Dmitry's eyes, instead, she found something more complex, layers of pain and determination that spoke of personal stakes she didn't understand. "You speak Russian like a native, speak 7 languages like a native." Marcus held out a coffee cup, steam rising from the black surface like incense. It's useful in my line of work, which is justice." The word came out flat and final, as if that explained everything. The kind the legal system can't provide. Lena accepted the coffee but didn't drink, afraid to let her guard down even for a second. "My father never mentioned you. Not once in 26 years. Your father kept many secrets, Princessa, some to protect you, others to protect himself." Marcus leaned against the counter, his posture casual, but his eyes alert. "The arrangement we had was insurance. If something happened to him, I'd take care of his daughter." "Take care of me how?" Marcus's smile was all sharp edges, however necessary. The ambiguity in his answer sent warning bells clanging through Elena's mind. She'd trusted one man completely, and it had gotten her father killed. She wouldn't make that mistake again. "I want to see proof," she said. "Documents, contracts, something that shows this arrangement existed." Smart girl. Marcus moved toward a wall safe hidden behind a Monet reproduction, his fingers dancing over the digital lock. "Your father said you inherited his suspicious nature along with his eyes?" The safe opened with a soft click, revealing stacks of cash, several passports, and a manila envelope marked with her name in her father's familiar handwriting. Elena's heart clenched at the sight of his careful script. Marcus handed her the envelope with something that might have been sympathy. "He wrote this 6 months ago, after the first attempt on his life." Elena's hand shook as she broke the wax seal. Inside was a letter in Spanish, her father's final words to the daughter he'd tried so desperately to protect. "Mi querida Elena, if you are reading this, then I have failed to keep you safe from the world I tried to leave behind. Marcus Kane is a dangerous man, but he is also honorable in ways that matter. Trust him with your life, because he is the only one who can protect you from the storm that is coming." The flash drive contains evidence of money laundering operations that span 3 countries and 7 crime families. It is your inheritance and your weapon. Use it wisely. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Papa tears blurred Elena's vision, but she forced them back. Grief was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when so many people wanted her dead. "The drive," Marcus said. Quietly, "Where is it?" Elena pulled the small device from her purse, its innocuous appearance belying the power it contained. "Right here." "And I'm not handing it over until I know exactly what you plan to do with it. We're going to use it as bait." Marcus took the drive from her fingers, his skin brushing hers with unexpected warmth. "Kozlov thinks he eliminated all the evidence when he killed your father. When he discovers you survived and have the records, he'll come for you. That's supposed to make me feel better? Supposed to make you feel powerful?" Marcus moved closer. Close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, close enough to smell his cologne. Instead of running and hiding like, "Pray, we're going to hunt the hunter." Elena's pulse quickened, though whether from fear or something more dangerous, she couldn't say. "And when he comes, we'll be ready." Marcus reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "But first we need to make you disappear." The next 3 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Transformed Elena from a recognizable heiress into someone forgettable. Changing her hair color from ebony to platinum blonde, and teaching her to alter her posture and gait. He provided her with identification documents that were flawless forgeries, complete with a backstory she could recite in her sleep. "Your new name is Sophia Reyes," he explained, as they walked through Pike Place Market, testing her new identity in public. "You're a freelance translator from Mexico City, recently divorced, no family ties. Keep the story simple and consistent." Elena nodded, fighting the disorientation of becoming someone else entirely. Every mirror showed her a stranger, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing herself. Piece by piece, they stopped at a flower stall where an elderly woman with kind eyes sold roses the color of fresh blood. Marcus bought a single stem and handed it to Elena with a smile that transformed his entire face. "For my beautiful girlfriend," he said loudly enough for nearby vendors to hear, then softer, "Always maintain the cover, even when it feels unnecessary." Elena accepted the rose, hyper-aware of the way Marcus's fingers brushed hers, of how natural it felt to lean into his warmth. The danger wasn't just external anymore. She was beginning to trust him, to rely on him. and that terrified her more than any assassin ever could. They were walking back to the car when Elena spotted him. Dmitri Kozlov stood 30 yards away. At a seafood vendor, his silver hair gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. He looked exactly as she remembered from the warehouse, elegant, refined, and utterly without conscience. The man who had murdered her father with the casual indifference of swatting a fly. Elena's body went rigid with shock and rage. Her hand moved instinctively toward the gun Marcus had given her, hidden beneath her jacket. Don't. Marcus's fingers closed around her wrists like a steel trap. Not here. Not yet. He's right there. Elena whispered through gritted teeth. I could end this now. Get us both killed in the process. Marcus pulled her closer, his voice a low growl in her ear. This is exactly what I meant about being ready. Emotional reactions will get you killed. Elena fought against his grip, but Marcus was immovable. Let me go look around, he commanded. Really look. Elena forced herself to scan the market with objective eyes, and her blood turned to ice. 3 men in dark suits had positioned themselves at strategic points around the square. A 4th watched from a coffee shop across the street. All of them were focused on Kozlov, but their eyes swept the crowd with professional alertness. He's not alone, she breathed. He's never alone. Oh. And right now, he doesn't know you're alive. That's our only advantage. Marcus's grip on her wrist loosened, but didn't release. We stick to the plan. Lena watched Kozlov purchase salmon with the same hands that had pulled the trigger on her father, and something cold and hard crystallized in her chest. Patience. She could learn patience. What's the plan? She asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time since they'd met, it reached his eyes. We're going to give him exactly what he wants, you.
Us.
The implication hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and Elena realized that whatever game they were playing, the stakes had just gotten infinitely higher. The abandoned warehouse, on the outskirts of Tacoma, smelled of rust and broken dreams. Elena stood in the shadows between towering shipping containers, her platinum hair gleaming under the sparse lighting Marcus had strategically placed throughout the space. The wire taped to her chest felt like a brand against her skin, broadcasting every word to the surveillance team, positioned 3 blocks away. Remember? Marcus's voice crackled through the nearly invisible earpiece. Get him talking about your father's murder? We need a confession on record. Elena touched the small of her back, feeling the reassuring weight of the pistol hidden beneath her jacket. They'd rehearsed this moment for 3 days, planning every detail, every contingency. But now that Dmitri Kozlov was 5 minutes away from walking through those doors, terror and anticipation warred in her chest like opposing armies. I'm ready, she whispered into the night air. No. Marcus's voice came back, softer now, almost intimate. You're magnificent. The words sent an unwelcome warmth through her body, a reminder of how the lines between partnership and something deeper had blurred over the past week. Marcus had become more than her protector. He'd become her anchor, the steady presence that kept her from drowning in grief and rage. The way he looked at her, as if she were both precious and dangerous, made her feel alive in ways she'd never experienced, which was exactly why she couldn't afford to trust those feelings. Not tonight.
Right.
Car headlights swept across the warehouse. Entrance, and Elena's pulse spiked. Showtime. Dmitri Kozlov entered alone, his footsteps echoing off the concrete walls with funeral solemnity. At 62, he remained imposing, his silver hair perfectly styled, and his expensive suit unmarked by the industrial grime surrounding them. Only his eyes betrayed his true nature, cold, calculating, empty of human warmth. Elena Vasquez, he said, his Russian accent thick with mock sympathy. Or should I call you Sophia Reyes? Your new identity is quite convincing. Elena's blood turned to ice. He knew about her cover, which meant he knew far more than they'd anticipated. I prefer Elena, she replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. It's the name my father gave me. You remember him, don't you? Victor Vasquez? Kozlov smiled, and the expression was worse than a scream. Of course, a brilliant man. Forgot where his loyalties belonged. His loyalties were to his family. To me, his loyalties were to money, just like everyone else. Kozlov began walking in a slow circle around her, a predator sizing up wounded prey. Did you really think I wouldn't discover your little scheme? The surveillance equipment, the wire you're wearing, your mysterious new partner? Lena fought to keep her expression neutral, even as panic clawed at her throat. This was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus Kane, Kozlov said the name like a curse. Former FSB, former CIA, current pain in my ass. Tell me, little girl, what did he promise you? Justice. Revenge. Love. The last word hit Elena like a physical blow. She touched her earpiece instinctively, but heard only static. Problems with your communication? Kozlov's smile widened. Electronic interference is such a nuisance. Elena's hand moved toward her weapon. But Kozlov raised his own gun with casual indifference. The barrel pointed directly at her heart. I wouldn't. My men have orders to kill Marcus the moment you make any aggressive moves. Kozlov tilted his head like a curious bird. Unless, of course, that's what you want. Where is he? Safe for now. Kozlov reached into his jacket and withdrew a tablet, its screen showing a live video feed. Elena's heart stopped. Marcus was bound to a chair in what looked like another warehouse, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. 3 armed men surrounded him, their faces hidden by shadows. He appeared unconscious, but as Elena watched, his eyes flickered open and found the camera as if he could see her through it. Let him go, Elena whispered. Your fight is with me. My fight is with anyone who threatens my business interests. Kozlov set the tablet on a nearby crate where Elena could still see Marcus's motionless form. Your father understood that eventually. You murdered him in cold blood. I eliminated a liability. Kozlov's voice carried no emotion whatsoever. Just as I eliminated his business partners in Bogota, his contacts in Miami, and his financial records in the Caymans. Elena felt her world tilt. Those were new names, new locations. Information that went far beyond what they'd suspected about her father's death. All of them? Every single person who knew about the money laundering operation. Slav stepped closer, his gun never wavering, except for one stubborn daughter who refuses to disappear quietly. The flash drive contains financial records that are now obsolete thanks to my thoroughness. But you've served another purpose entirely. Kozlov's smile turned predatory. You've led me to Marcus Kane, the one man who's been making my life difficult for the past 2 years. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Elena had been bait, but not for Kozlov. She'd been bait for Marcus, a way to draw him into the open where he could be eliminated permanently. You're lying, am I? Kozlov gestured to the tablet, where one of the guards had placed a gun against Marcus's temple. Shall we test your theory? Elena's training deserted her. All of Marcus's careful lessons about controlling emotion, about thinking tactically, crumbled under the weight of seeing the man she'd come to care for at death's door. Don't hurt him. Kozlov's expression brightened with genuine pleasure. Now we're getting somewhere. Tell me, did you really think Marcus Kane developed feelings for you? Did you imagine that a man with his experience and resources chose to help you out of the goodness of his heart? Each word landed like a dagger between Elena's ribs, but she forced herself to meet Kozlov's gaze. What do you want? It's the same thing I've always wanted. It's for inconvenient people to stop being inconvenient. Kozlov raised his gun until the barrel rested against Elena's forehead. Your father cost me millions of dollars and countless hours of cleanup. You've cost me even more by staying alive. Marcus Kane has cost me operations in 3 countries. So kill us and be done with it. Oh, I intend to. But first, I want you to watch your lover die, knowing it's your fault. Kozlov's finger tightened on the trigger. Then I want you to call him and tell him exactly what you're about to do to make his suffering stop. Elena looked at the screen, where Marcus remained motionless at Kozlov's finger poised to end her life. At the concrete walls that would witness her death, her father's voice echoed in her memory. Trust him with your life, because he is the only one who can protect you from the storm that is coming. But Victor Vasquez had been wrong about many things. Make the call, Kozlov commanded. Elena reached for her phone with trembling hands, but as her fingers touched the device, She heard something that made her blood sing with hope. The distant sound of sirens, growing louder by the second. Kozlov heard it too, his head snapping toward the warehouse. Entrance, impossible. Marcus taught me many things, Elena said quietly, her hand now resting on her concealed weapon, including never to trust anyone completely. The sirens were closer now, maybe 2 minutes away. Elena had exactly that long to stay alive, including him. Kozlov's voice carried a note of grudging respect. Elena smiled, and for the first time in her life. She understood what her father had meant when he talked about the dangerous game they played, especially him. The sirens cut through the night like screams, but Elena knew they wouldn't arrive in time. Kozlov's finger was already tightening on the trigger when the warehouse lights exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging them into darkness. Move, Marcus's voice cut through the chaos as emergency lighting flickered to life. Casting everything in hellish red, Elena threw herself sideways as Kozlov's gun discharged, the bullet sparking off the concrete where her head had been a heartbeat before. She rolled behind a shipping container and drew her weapon. Her hands steady, despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Marcus emerged from the shadows like an avenging angel, blood streaming from his temple, but his green eyes burning with deadly focus. The zip ties that had bound him lay severed on the ground, and Elena realized with a surge of admiration that he'd been playing possum the entire time. How? Kozlov snarled, backing to where the warehouse entrance as Marcus advanced with predatory grace. Remote detonator in my watch, Marcus replied, his gun trained on Kozlov's chest. Elena's 911 call 20 minutes ago. 3 different backup plans running simultaneously. His smile was winter cold. Did you really think I'd walk into your trap unprepared? Elena felt a mixture of relief and betrayal. He'd known. Marcus had known this was a setup, and he'd let her walk into it anyway. Let her feel the terror of thinking they were both about to die. You used me, she said, her gun now pointed at Marcus instead of Kozlov. Marcus's eyes flicked to her for just a moment, and she saw something that might have been regret. I protected you by lying to me, by keeping you alive. Kozlov laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Ah, young love. So predictable, so icily exploited. The sirens were louder now, maybe 30 seconds away. Elena could hear car doors slamming in the distance, heavy boots on gravel. But Kozlov didn't seem concerned about the approaching police, which sent ice through her veins. Q. You called the wrong people, she realized. I called exactly the right people, Kozlov confirmed. My associates in Seattle PD will be very interested. To discover Marcus Kane and Elena Vasquez died in a tragic shootout, 2 dangerous criminals who killed each other in a dispute over stolen money, Marcus's jaw tightened. The flash drive evidence will disappear along with your bodies. Kozlov raised his weapon, choosing Marcus as his first target. Goodbye, old friend, Elena didn't think. She moved on pure instinct, throwing herself between Marcus and Kozlov's gun just as the older man pulled the trigger. The bullet hit her in the shoulder, spinning her around and slamming her into Marcus's chest. Pain exploded through her body, like liquid fire, but she stayed conscious long enough to feel Marcus catch her, to hear him roar her name with anguish that sounded genuinely heartbroken. Elena. Blood soaked through her jacket, warm and sticky, but she forced herself to focus on Marcus's face above her. His green eyes were wide with something that looked like genuine terror, and his hands shook as he pressed them against her wound. I'm okay, she gasped, though they both knew it was a lie. Kozlov approached with his gun raised for a finishing shot. But Marcus shifted to shield Elena with his body, his own weapon forgotten in his desperation to keep pressure on her bleeding shoulder. How touching, Kozlov sneered. The infamous Marcus Kane, brought low by a pretty face. The infamous Dmitry Kozlov, a new voice interrupted from the warehouse entrance. Brought low by his own arrogance. Elena turned her head to see Agent Sarah Chen of the FBI entering with a full tactical team, their weapons trained on Kozlov. The older man's face went pale as realization dawned. The wire, Marcus said quietly, his hands still pressed against Elena's wound. I gave her 2 transmitters, one for our team, one for the Bureau. Elena stared up at him through waves of pain and confusion. You're FBI, former consultant now. Marcus's voice was rough with emotion. Deep cover for 2 years, building a case against Kozlov's organization and my father. Marcus's eyes darkened. Was my informant. The arrangement he mentioned wasn't about protection. It was about justice. The betrayal hit Elena harder than the bullet. Everything had been a lie. Her father, Marcus, the connection she'd felt growing between them. All of it calculated manipulation designed to bring down Dmitry Kozlov. Drop your weapon, Agent Chen commanded, and Kozlov reluctantly complied, his gun clattering across the concrete. As the tactical team moved in to secure the scene, Elena felt consciousness slipping away. But before the darkness claimed her, she heard Marcus's whisper words that sounded like prayer. I'm sorry, Princessa. For all of it. Elena woke in a hospital room, painted the color of institutional hope, machines beeping softly around her like mechanical lullabies. Her shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, but the pain was manageable thanks to whatever cocktail of medications dripped through the floor. In her arm, Marcus sat in a chair beside her bed, his head in his hands. He'd changed into jeans and a gray sweater, but she could see exhaustion in every line of his body. When he looked up and saw her watching him, relief flooded his features. How long? Elena's voice came out as a croak. 18 hours. It lost a lot of blood. Marcus reached for a water cup and held the straw to her lips. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery. Elena drank gratefully, using the time to study Marcus's face. The remote professional was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely shaken. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually perfect hair was disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it. Kozlov? In federal custody. Thanks to your wire recording, we have him on conspiracy, murder, and about 30 other charges. He'll never see the outside of a prison cell. Elena nodded, feeling a hollow satisfaction. Justice served, her father avenged. So why did she feel empty instead of triumphant? The truth, she said quietly. All of it. Marcus stood and walked. To the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. Your father approached me 2 years ago. He'd discovered that Kozlov was planning to eliminate all witnesses to the money laundering operation, including Victor himself. We made a deal. He'd provide evidence and testimony in exchange for protection for both of you. But you couldn't. Protect him, no. A single word carried infinite regret. He insisted on one final meeting with Kozlov, claimed he could convince him to leave you alone. I argued against it, but Victor was stubborn. Elena remembered her father's determination, the way he'd kissed her goodbye that final morning. If he knew he wouldn't be coming home, he sacrificed himself. He died believing I would keep you safe. Marcus turned from the window, his green eyes bright with unshed tears. Everything I did, every lie I told, was to honor that promise, including making me fall for you. The question hung in the air like a blade, sharp enough to draw blood. Marcus's face went carefully blank, but Elena caught the flash of pain before he could hide it. That wasn't supposed to happen, he said quietly. Which part? You feeling something, or me feeling something? Marcus moved back to her bedside, his movements careful and deliberate. Both. I don't do emotional attachments, Elena. They're a weakness I can't afford. And yet somewhere between protecting you and watching you transform into someone strong enough to face down killers, I forgot to protect myself. Marcus reached out as if to touch her face, then stopped himself. You deserve better than someone like me. Elena caught his hand before he could pull away, ignoring the pain that shot through her shoulder with the movement. Someone like what? Someone whose job is violence. Someone who's killed more people than he can count. Someone who will always choose the mission over everything else. Marcus tried to pull free, but Elena held on with surprising strength. Someone who spent 2 years infiltrating a criminal organization to avenge strangers. Someone who risked his life to save mine. Someone who cried over my hospital bed when he thought I might die. Marcus's eyes widened. You were unconscious. Not the whole time. Elena studied his face, seeing past the walls he'd built to the man beneath. The question is, what happens now? Now. You disappear? No? New identity. New life. Federal protection. until the trials are over." Marcus's voice was purely professional again, but Elena could see the cost of that control in the tension of his jaw. "You'll be safe. Alone. Free," Elena laughed, the sound bitter even to her own ears. "Free to do what? Start over somewhere else, with another fabricated identity. Pretend none of this ever happened. It's the best I can offer."
Oh no.
Elena's grip on his hand tightened. "It's the safest you can offer. There's a difference." Marcus finally met her. Eyes and the vulnerability she saw there took her breath away. "Elena, what we have, it's built on lies and violence and circumstances that won't exist once this is over. When the adrenaline fades, when you're not dependent on me for survival, what's left? I guess we'll find out. I can't ask you to take that risk. You're not asking. I'm choosing." Elena sat up straighter, ignoring the fire in her shoulder. "My father spent his life making choices for me, protecting me from truth he thought I couldn't handle. You've been doing the same thing. Because I care about you. No? Then trust me to make my own decisions about my own life." Elena's voice grew stronger with conviction. "I've seen who you really are, Marcus. Not the cover identity, not the professional killer, but the man who held my hand when I cried for my father. The man who taught me to be strong enough to survive anything." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "The Bureau wants me in Moscow for the next phase of the operation. Deep cover again, possibly for years. Then I'll wait." "Lena, I'll wait," she repeated, her voice carrying the steel her father had always admired. "However long it takes." Marcus brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles with devastating tenderness. "You might be the strongest person I've ever met. I learned from the best." The hospital room fell silent except for the steady beep of medical equipment and the distant sounds of a city waking up to another day. Elena felt the shift in the air, the sense that this moment was both an ending and a beginning. Agent Chen appeared in the doorway, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes kind. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need to debrief while everything is fresh in your memory." Marcus stood reluctantly, his hands slipping from Elena's with obvious reluctance. "I have to go. I know. This isn't goodbye," Elena smiled, and for the first time since her father's death, it felt genuine. "I know that too." As Marcus walked toward the door, Elena called after him. "Marcus," he turned back, hope and pain warring in his expression. "When you come back," Elena said, her voice carrying across the space between them like a promise. "We're going to have a very long conversation about honesty and trust, and what happens when two people decide to stop running from the truth." Marcus's smile was brilliant enough to light the entire room. "I'm looking forward to it." After he left, Elena stared out the window at the Seattle skyline, her hand unconsciously moving to touch the place where his lips had kissed her skin. The old Elena would have chosen safety, would have taken the federal protection and disappeared into anonymity. But that woman had died in a warehouse the night her father was murdered. The woman who remained understood that some things were worth fighting for, worth waiting for, worth risking everything to protect. And Marcus Kane, with all his shadows and secrets and dangerous beauty, was definitely one of those things. Asterisk. 2 years, 3 months, and 16 days later, Elena stood in the same Pike Place market where she'd first seen Dmitry Kozlov, but this time she wasn't running. The elderly flower vendor recognized her despite the return to her natural dark hair, despite the confidence that had replaced desperation in her posture. "The roses are especially beautiful today," the woman said with a knowing smile, gesturing to the deep red blooms that had become Elena's signature purchase every Friday for the past year. "I'll take 2 dozen," Elena replied, her Spanish accent barely detectable after months of speech therapy designed to erase Sofia Reyes entirely. She'd spent the past 2 years rebuilding herself from the ground up. The federal protection had lasted only 6 months, long enough for the trials that put Kozlov and his associates away for life. After that, Elena had made a choice that surprised everyone, including herself. Instead of disappearing into witness protection, She'd used her father's hidden assets to start a non-profit organization providing legal aid to families destroyed by organized crime. The work was dangerous. She received death threats monthly, had survived 2 assassination attempts, and lived in a fortress disguised as a downtown Seattle apartment. But it was also meaningful in ways her sheltered previous life had never been. She was honoring her father's memory while helping others avoid his fate. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd become exactly what Marcus had tried to protect her. From someone who chose justice over safety, purpose over comfort, Lena paid for the roses and walked through the market with the easy confidence of someone who'd learned to navigate danger without losing herself to paranoia she'd developed. Her father's instincts could spot surveillance from 3 blocks away and identify potential threats by the way they moved through crowds, which was why she knew Marcus was following her before she ever saw his face. He stayed exactly 40 yards behind her, blending into the tourist crowds with the effortless skill of someone who'd spent years perfecting invisibility. But Elena knew his walk, the particular way he held his shoulders, the rhythm of his breathing when he thought he was unobserved. She'd been expecting him. Agent Chen had called that morning with the news that the Moscow operation was finally complete, that Marcus Kane was officially coming home. What she hadn't expected was the way her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird, or how her hands trembled as she arranged the roses in the passenger seat of her car. 2 years. She'd waited 2 years for this moment, building a life strong enough to stand beside his instead of depending on his protection. The question was whether the man who returned would be the same one who'd kissed her knuckles in a hospital room and promised to come back. Elena drove to Cary Park, where the Seattle skyline spread below like a glittering promise. She'd chosen this spot deliberately. Neutral ground where they could see anyone approaching, where the beauty of the view might soften whatever difficult conversation was about to unfold. She didn't have to wait long. Marcus appeared at the far end of the park as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. He looked different, leaner, harder, with new scars that spoke of violence she could only imagine. His dark hair was longer, and his green eyes held depths that hadn't been there before. But when he smiled at the sight of her, Elena's breath caught in her throat. It was the same devastating expression that had lit up the hospital room, the one that had sustained her through 827 lonely nights. "Princessa," he said as he approached, and the endearment in his familiar voice made her knees weak. "Marcus." Elena turned to face him fully, noting how his gaze took in every detail of her appearance with the thoroughness of a man reacquainting himself with something precious. "You look." Marcus stopped arm's length away, close enough to touch, but maintaining careful distance. "Incredible. Strong. I had good teachers." Elena gestured to the space between them. "You can come closer. I won't bite." "I'm not sure I trust myself to stop it closer." The admission hung in the air like a challenge, loaded with 2 years of separation and longing. Elena felt heat pool in her stomach, but she forced herself to address the elephant between them. "Agent Chen debriefed me yesterday about Moscow, about what you did there." Marcus's expression shuddered, professional walls sliding back into place. It was necessary. Was killing Kozlov's son necessary? Or was it personal? Question hit its mark. Marcus's hands clenched into fists, and for a moment, Elena saw the violence he'd carried with him across continents, the darkness he'd absorbed in service of justice. "Alexei Kozlov was trafficking children," Marcus said quietly. "Selling them to the highest bidder across Eastern Europe. When I discovered what he was doing, you executed him. I eliminated a threat. You murdered him outside his daughter's school in broad daylight, Marcus. That's not elimination. That's sending a message." Marcus moved closer despite his earlier caution, his green eyes blazing with emotion. "Some messages need to be sent. Some lines can't be crossed without consequences." Elena studied his face, seeing the man who'd held her while she grieved, who'd taught her to defend herself, who'd walked into hell to bring her father's killer to justice. She also saw the predator, the killer, the person capable of ending lives. Without hesitation, when his moral code was violated. "I'm not afraid of what you are," she said softly. "You should be. I'm afraid of what you might become if you keep walking this path alone." Elena stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes, close enough to smell the cologne that had haunted her dreams. I'm afraid of who I might become if I let you. Marcus reached out slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was reverent, as if she were made of spun glass and infinite worth. 2 years, he whispered. 2 years of thinking about this moment, about whether you'd still want someone like me when. The danger was over. The danger's never going to be over, Marcus. Not for people like us. Elena covered his hands with hers, anchoring him to this moment. The question is whether we face it together or apart. Together means putting you at risk. Again, apart means letting fear make our choices for us. Elena smiled, and it held all the hard-won wisdom of someone who'd learned to choose love over safety. I'd rather live dangerously with you than safely without you. Marcus kissed her then, soft and desperate and 2 years overdue. Elena tasted salt and realized one of them was crying, maybe both, and didn't care. His hands were gentle on her face, careful of her healing injuries, but she could feel the restrained hunger in his touch. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elena rested her forehead against his. So what now? She asked. Now we go home, Marcus replied, his voice rough with emotion. Together. Where's home? Marcus smiled, and this time it reached his eyes completely. Wherever you are, Princesa, wherever you are. They walked back to Elena's car hand in hand. Two broken people who'd found something beautiful in the wreckage of their separate tragedies. The Seattle skyline glittered around them like scattered diamonds, full of promise and possibility and the kind of future worth fighting for. Elena had learned that love wasn't about safety or certainty or protection from the storms of life. It was about finding someone worth weathering those storms beside, someone who saw your scars and shadows and chose to stay anyway. As they drove through the city that had witnessed their beginning, Elena felt her father's presence like a blessing. Victor Vasquez had been wrong about many things, but he'd been right about the most important one. Marcus Kane was dangerous, but he was also honorable in the ways that mattered most. And sometimes, Elena thought, as Marcus's hand found hers across the center console, the most dangerous choice was also the only one worth making. The end. Asterisk, like this video if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. And let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.